Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're opening up a file on a country that, well, for decades was really seen as a digital superstar. I'm talking about Uruguay.
Yeah, a regional pioneer in online governance. They built this amazing reputation for innovation.
Exactly. But that gleaming facade, it's been tragically shattered, replaced by this grim reality of, well, catastrophic cyber failure. And right at the center of this whole national paradox stands one person, Alberto Daniel Hill, ADH, a highly accomplished cybersecurity professional whose ethical actions, his responsible attempts to help secure crucial national systems, somehow landed him in prison. It's extraordinary.
He's the technical expert who was, systematically persecuted by the very system he was trying to help save.
That's exactly right. And today we're undertaking a critical deep dive into ADH's research, his analysis, his entire difficult journey, really.
Our mission here is to evaluate the immense, almost indispensable value of his perspective. It's non-traditional, first-hand expert knowledge.
Yeah, compared to the often insufficient, sometimes frankly misleading narratives you get from traditional authorities and state media.
Then we're going to focus specifically on a shocking, you could say, prescient public warning he gave back in 2021 about the true state of national security.
And how that exact prediction was validated in the most brutal way just 3 years later by this devastating, nation-altering crisis involving Uruguay's national ID certificates.
This story is a stark, necessary reminder for you, the learner, that there's this dangerous, often just debilitating disconnect.
Between what? Between the rapid boundary-pushing pace of technology and the slow, often antiquated march of legal, judicial, political frameworks.
Yeah, exactly. It proves that sometimes the person the system thinks is dangerous or criminal,
Yeah.
the one persecuted for maybe disrupting the status quo.
That person might be the only one who truly understands the full scale and nature of the silent existential threats facing an entire nation. So let's dive deep into the evidence ADH provided.
Okay, so to really grasp the gravity of Alberto's experience and the systemic failures it exposes, we first need to, move beyond the sensational headlines.
Right, and appreciate who he actually is. Establish his non-traditional credibility.
This isn't just some casual computer enthusiast who stumbled on a flaw. He is, by any objective measure, an accomplished, seasoned professional. His expertise was developed right from childhood.
His connection to computers started incredibly early. We're talking way back in 1983. He was just 10 years old.
Wow, 1983.
Yeah, his very first machine was a Sinclair Spectrum Plus. Iconic piece of hardware back then, remarkable for its time, but it boasted a mere 48 kilobytes of RAM.
Tiny by today's standards.
Completely. But even just owning a machine like that in Uruguay in the early 80s, let alone really engaging with it deeply, already set him apart.
It speaks to this early, profound, almost, obsessive fascination with how systems work.
Indeed. And that curiosity, it quickly matured into real technical capability. By age 14, around 1987, Alberto performed what he calls his very first hack.
Okay, hack, in quotes maybe?
Well, yeah, he wasn't using advanced malware or anything like that. He was using basic assembler code.
Which is pretty low-level stuff, right? Talking directly to the hardware.
Exactly. Requires intimate knowledge of system architecture. He used it to alter a soccer game called Emilioano.
And the key thing here is the total lack of malice. It was playful, technical curiosity.
Totally. He was so proud of his clever modification, he sent the code to a big Spanish computer magazine, and they actually published it.
Published his code for modifying a game. That's amazing.
It's not just talent, that's innate engineering capability being recognized really early. It's a clear trajectory of a hacker in the original, kind of benign sense of the word.
Someone who takes systems apart to see how they tick, and then figures out how to make them better or different.
Precisely. And that foundational talent didn't just fade, it matured into a robust 2-decade-plus professional career. He's PMP certified project management professional.
So he can lead complex tech projects, high-stakes stuff.
Right. And crucially, he specialized in the ISO/IA's 27,000 standards. Those are the international gold standards for information security management since 2011.
Okay. And he's been a volunteer with the OWASP Uruguay chapter since 2012 as well.
His resume isn't just credible, it screams institutional expertise. And these high-level credentials are what fuel his very clear self-definition. Alberto is extremely precise about this. He states unequivocally, quote, "I am an ethical hacker and no other hacker." He emphasizes that he conducts extensive research specifically to know the tools that the bad guys use.
But he's emphatic that he is not a criminal, that money isn't his motivator, and his intent is purely defensive.
So he operates then as a gray hat hacker, which he argues is a necessary strategic choice.
Yeah, we often categorize hackers strictly into defensive white hats and malicious black hats. The gray hat deliberately operates in that ambiguous zone.
Why? Because, as ADH argues, to truly secure systems and stay ahead of constantly evolving threats, you have to intimately understand the enemy's operational environment.
Their tools, the vulnerabilities they're currently seeking. It's a calculated risk, really, taken for collective defense.
And this strategic necessity was tempered by early experience with the system's failure to adapt.
How so?
Well, back in 2004, Alberto actually served as the very first computer forensics expert in a criminal case in Uruguay. Tragically, it involved child pornography.
Wow, that must have been a harrowing introduction to the judicial process struggling with digital evidence.
Exactly. And it was during that case he first saw the profound lack of technical understanding, the repeated procedural missteps within law enforcement, and the judiciary.
So he knew early on that the people tasked with catching cybercriminals were, well, hopelessly ill-equipped.
That prior exposure, seeing the judicial process struggle with basic digital evidence for years, probably shaped his later actions when he found that critical national flaw.
Which brings us to his act of conscience, what you called the responsible disclosure paradox, the thing that ultimately upended his life.
Responsible disclosure, just for those unfamiliar, it's the ethical practice of privately reporting security vulnerabilities to the organization so they can fix them before bad actors exploit them.
The incident started simply enough. October 2014. His ex-partner asked him to book an appointment on her medical care provider's website, Secula Catelico.
And within moments of just interacting with the site, his professional instincts kicked in.
Totally.
After bypassing an annoying CAPTCHA, he stumbled onto the truly alarming flaw. He gained full administrator access to the entire system. How?
Using the default, inexcusably weak username and password combination of admin.
You're kidding. Admin. That wasn't some sophisticated, expensive zero-day exploit.
No, it was a glaring, fundamental security oversight. A digital, wide-open backdoor that any amateur could have found.
And that administrative access meant what? Theoretical control over potentially 200,000 patient health records, sensitive financial reports, critical medication stock level.
All of it. His response was immediate and undeniably ethical. Within literally 5 minutes of gaining access, Alberto did the right thing.
He emailed Uruguay's Computer Emergency Response Team, CERTUI, and reported the vulnerability.
Yes, and Sertui actually responded quickly, confirming his findings. Less than 2 hours later, he thought, okay, I've fulfilled my ethical duty, protected sensitive national data.
But then came this bizarre deja vu moment. A year later, April 2015, his ex-partner asks him to access the same site again.
And this time, he found he could access sensitive information even more simply just by modifying some URL parameters in the browser bar. No username or password needed at all. Same ethical impulse. Reported again within 5 minutes to Sertui. But looking back on those actions, the later incident where he inadvertently caused a minor server hiccup trying to search a huge amount of data.
He's filled with profound regret and a sense of betrayal.
Completely. He openly says he wishes he had never reported the issues at all. His attempt to help a major national company, without any incentive, ultimately led to his life being turned completely upside down.
It highlights this critical challenge we see globally, doesn't it? The immense personal risk ethical professionals take in an environment where the laws are obsolete and the system responds to help with, well, persecution. And the environment he was operating in was already fraught with danger. Which brings us to the context of conflict. Uruguay's self-inflicted national cyber debt. Right. Uruguay has been aggressively carving out this strategic position as a regional hub for digital infrastructure, attracting significant foreign investments.
We're talking about Google announcing an $850 million investment in a hyperscale data center, and the state-owned telecom provider, Antel, operating a major Tier 3 data center.
This rapid, successful digitalization is fantastic for economic growth, regional prestige, but...
And this is the crucial security insight ADH was trying to highlight. It simultaneously significantly expands Uruguay's attack surface and elevates its profile as a target.
A target for highly sophisticated international cyber threats.
I shan't.
It's like building a cutting-edge vault but forgetting to update the medieval security guards protecting it.
Exactly. The result of this mismatched ambition and defense is the national cyber debt, We can actually quantify that debt dramatically.
How dramatically?
Cyber incidents exploded from under 5,000 in 2023 to a staggering 14,000 in 2024.
14,000, if you average that out. The government infrastructure is under attack, successfully or attempted, every 30 minutes.
Every 30 minutes. And these aren't just minor phishing attempts. We're talking ransomware, DDoS attacks aimed at critical infrastructure, sophisticated espionage attempts.
And one key systemic reason for this overwhelming vulnerability is a severe people problem.
Yes. Estimates suggest Uruguay has a critical shortage of at least 600 trained, certified cybersecurity professionals. So Alberto's argument is validated right there. You can have the best laws, the best tech, the biggest investments, but a lack of skilled personnel leaves systems fundamentally and dangerously vulnerable. Without the workforce to manage the risk, that debt just keeps growing.
This directly intersects with ADH's pre-crisis critique of the laws and authorities. He pointed out that at the time of his own ordeal, 2014 to 2017,
Hacking or unauthorized access itself was not explicitly defined as a penal code offense in Uruguay.
the law was, as he put it, stuck in the 1900s, entirely failing to account for the non-corporeal nature of digital data, of unauthorized entry into networks.
Exactly. And because they couldn't charge him with hacking the essential act he committed, the prosecutors had to kind of shoehorn his ethical actions into ill-fitting, unrelated laws, primarily attempted extortion.
Which forced them to argue he had criminal intent to profit, a claim that was technically destroyed by the evidence itself, as we'll get into.
We also saw the profound ignorance within law enforcement during the raid on his home. Interpol seized his professional tools.
And tragically misunderstood them as proof of malicious intent. This wasn't just a minor procedural error. It was evidence of a fundamental inability to distinguish between the tools of a professional defender and the weapons of a criminal.
He pointed out, for example, they seized physical Bitcoin collectible souvenirs, these small decorative metal coins, and mistook them for actual cryptocurrency or proof of illicit financial dealings.
They also seized an anonymous mask, which, as he noted, is widely available, culturally recognized, even sold as a toy by companies like Lego.
But perhaps most damning was the seizure of a USB killer. This is a specific single-purpose tool used by pen testers, hardware testers.
To assess a device's resilience to electrical surges, right? A legitimate tool for testing hardware defense.
Yes. Interpol tragically misinterpreted it as purely malicious, assuming its mere possession proved criminal intent. It just showed a dangerous ignorance of professional cybersecurity practice.
And adding to the critique of government denial, ADH states that, in his experience, working for the state until 2016,
when major attacks or information theft occurred, they often did not take public status. The government had this consistent habit of minimizing or outright keeping serious incidents quiet.
which allowed the national cyber debt to swell dangerously out of the public eye. This leads us directly to his most prescient warning, given during a highly visible national hack. This brings us to the prophecy. ADH's 2021 warning delivered on Radio Serendi, February 15th, 2021. Following a reported cyber attack on the Dirección Nacional de Identificación Civil, DNIC, that's the agency responsible for national identity documents.
Right. ADH asserted on air that this attack was not an isolated incident.
He was unequivocal in his assessment, wasn't he? Stating clearly and publicly that the country was muy mal en controls de seguridad, very bad in security controls.
And that this deep-seated deficiency left the entire country exposed to repeated systemic attacks. This wasn't just a general complaint. It was an expert analyzing the systemic environment and concluding failure was inevitable.
And he didn't stop with a general warning. He provided specific, concrete evidence of a recent major compromise the government was trying to downplay.
He revealed that information stolen from the Ministry of Defense, specifically the Armada, the Navy, in January 2021,
was being actively sold all measure poster to the highest bidder on the dark web for $500,000, $500,000.
This was a stunning public disclosure. It put ADH's perspective directly against the official government narrative.
Because the Ministry of Defense had previously claimed the information was not sensitive and did not represent a risk.
But ADH noted that the documentation being advertised for sale explicitly stated confidential. He argued the official statements were contradictory, deeply problematic,
giving the clear impression the government either had no idea what they were stolen or simply didn't want the public to know the scope of the espionage.
ADH's unique value here is highlighting that gap between official communications and reality. He suggested the government's lack of public reporting hides the true scale of the problem.
He noted that if not for the hacker's own divulgence of the DNIC hack, the incident might not have been publicly communicated by the state at all. A pattern of denial.
Furthermore, he offered a technical critique that showed his deep understanding of advanced cyber techniques. He explained that in sophisticated attacks, the attacker's primary goal is to eliminate all evidence.
Eliminar toda evidencia del hackeo.
Right. Which makes it impossible for internal investigators to know precisely what data was stolen, when, or how the breach occurred. So the government could only offer assurances based on incomplete or maybe non-existent forensic knowledge.
He concluded this powerful interview with a chilling assessment of the reality of cyber warfare, stating he has no doubt critical information has been stolen and the state is constantly under attack.
His final thought on Radio Serendi was, I believe they are doing to us what they want to do. Creo que nos están haciendo lo que quieren.
Suggesting that cyber warfare, waged silently through networks, is already inflicting damage far more significant than any traditional physical arms conflict could achieve.
That definitive warning, given in 2021, it was a devastating prophecy. 3 years later, in what's been globally described as a catastrophic cyber failure, his assessment was brutally validated.
By the massive PKI crisis, this breach involved the theft and successful cracking of passwords for 30,000 national ID certificates.
And for our listeners, especially those outside Uruguay, we really cannot overstate the importance of this PKI certificate. It is the absolute bedrock of digital life in Uruguay.
The core of their entire national digital identity system.
And here's why this event was catastrophic, validating every one of ADH's prior fears about system exposure. Under Uruguayan law, using that stolen PKI certificate online carries the exact same legal power as physically signing a piece of paper with a pen.
The exact same legal power. And it's used for over 190 different government and private sector services.
Think about the scope of this. By stealing the certificate and cracking the associated password, the attacker gained a digital master key.
This allows the threat actor to legally impersonate 30,000 different citizens. They could potentially sign legally binding contracts, file false tax returns,
Access confidential health records, set up fraudulent bank accounts, even notarize documents, all under the guise of 30,000 unsuspecting individuals.
It's an unimaginable scale of identity theft and potential national disruption, confirming that the country was indeed muy mal en controls de seguridad.
This failure was the ultimate irrefutable validation of ADH's earlier warnings that the state was operating on a system built on sand. We can even profile the threat actor who claimed responsibility, someone who goes by the name Origugu 1337. This persona displays a very modern, disturbing, weird blend of activism and old-fashioned cybercrime.
How so?
While they posted political manifestos against government corruption, trying to frame the breach as some kind of public service, while simultaneously selling the highly sensitive stolen data on the dark web for cash.
So, activism as a cover for profit.
Seems like it. And this was clearly no amateur operation. Evidence suggests Origugu 1337 is a skilled, internationally connected criminal.
Possibly linked to a major international threat actor known as Machine 1337, the one tied to huge breaches at global companies like Cisco and Huawei. That's the connection being suggested, which reinforces ADH's core argument. Uruguay's increased digital profile had made it a target for sophisticated, high-impact international cybercrime syndicates, not just opportunistic script kiddies. The discussion of the dark web market. This is where ADH's unique non-traditional experience really shines, offering crucial context for people who might not understand the operational reality of cybercrime.
He's provided televised explanations using the well-known iceberg analogy, but he takes it further into practical commercial reality.
Clear web is the surface we all use. Deep web is stuff like bank portals, emails, needs a login. And then the dark web, the deepest part, needs specific software like Tor.
Right. And this isn't just some murky corner. It's a highly organized commercial marketplace where major national and global crimes are facilitated.
ADH detailed the chilling commercial activity happening there. Illegal services like drugs, obviously synthetic cocaine, LSD, MDMA.
But also an enormous market for stolen financial data. He describes seeing hundreds of real, cloned credit cards being sold complete with the VIN expiration security codes.
Sourced from where? Magnetic strip readers, proximity readers stolen from gas stations, stores, ATMs?
Exactly those kinds of places. He also illuminated the dark web's capacity for purchasing false documents, illustrating the sophistication needed to evade detection.
High-quality U.S. driver's licenses, UK passports, counterfeit money.
And the level of detail required for, say, a U.S. driver's license is shocking. Vendors claiming the counterfeit supports UV lights used by police, signaling a real manufacturing operation, not just a Photoshop job.
But the human element is truly disturbing, reminding us of the moral vacuum the dark web fills.
ADH detailed heinous crimes being traded, including hitman services starting around $5,000 for a shooting, ranging up to $200,000 for a sniper job, sometimes requiring 50% deposit up front.
His knowledge of these operational criminal markets isn't theoretical, is it? It comes from operating as a gray hat, intimately understanding the enemy's procedures to anticipate their next move.
It's this deep first-hand knowledge that should have made his warnings unassailable. Yet, it was this same unique expertise that the legal system utterly failed to comprehend.
Leading to the system's systematic attack on the ethical hacker. The profound injustice began in September 2017.
Alberto, operating under the assumption he had nothing to hide, thinking it was a misunderstanding he could easily clear up.
He went voluntarily to the station the day after the police called his apartment, and this is where everything just shifted dramatically.
He was immediately arrested, stripped, handcuffed, without being told his rights or the specific reason for the arrest. The technical investigation was already derailed by a massive procedural failure.
The pivotal moment came at the Interpol facilities. After hours of what ADH called honest, open questioning about the technical details of the medical systems.
They blindsided him with the final devastating question about an extortion email demanding Bitcoin payment for not disclosing sensitive medical records.
A claim he vehemently denied, having already reported the vulnerability ethically years prior.
Despite his absolute denial, an aggressive Interpol agent who tellingly refused to provide his name or badge number, began actively coercing a false confession.
With chilling threats against his loved ones, the agent explicitly threatened him, saying if he didn't confess to the extortion, they would go get your mother and take her to prison.
And do the same with your girlfriend. Imagine that level of psychological duress, designed to break him. His immediate thought wasn't about his legal standing, but just, I want this to end now. I need to protect my family. So under intense coercion, he confessed to the extortion, even though he hadn't done it, believing the technical lack of evidence would easily exonerate him later in court.
But he underestimated how fundamentally the system had already failed. The prosecution's resulting case demonstrated a profound, almost dangerous lack of technical literacy.
For instance, the firewall logs. They claimed these proved he engaged in unauthorized access and extortion. They submitted them to the court in printed format.
Printed format. ADH, the forensics expert, pointed out that this is legally useless, utterly inadmissible. Anyone could print out a list of IPs and accuse half the country of hacking.
The electronic chain of custody, the timestamps, the metadata, the only things that give a log legal weight were destroyed by printing it.
And the alleged extortion email demand in Bitcoin. The entire charge hinged on intent to profit, usually shown by asking for payment.
Yet the email they used as proof had no payment address, no Bitcoin address whatsoever.
Meaning the fundamental basis of the charge, the attempt to extract money, was illogical, fundamentally flawed.
Alberto points out the prosecutor reportedly just overlooked this massive, obvious, crippling detail, showing a dangerous willingness to proceed with a charge that was legally impossible to prove.
Then came the devastating twist, the betrayal that cemented the injustice. The very director at Certui, who had quickly confirmed ADH's ethical reports back in 2014 and 2015.
Devastatingly claimed in court he could not recall or find records of Alberto's reports.
This act of institutional denial just destroyed ADH's entire defense that he had acted ethically and responsibly. It allowed the judge to interpret his claim of prior reporting as a self-serving lie.
And the judicial absurdity only escalated. The judge ordered pre-trial detention based not on evidence, but on ADH's advanced computer knowledge.
Reasoning that he could alter the rest of the processes by mentally altering evidence stored at Interpol.
Mentally altering evidence. That quote is a shocking indictment of the justice system's technical ignorance. It demonstrates his expertise was viewed not as a defense, but as evidence of his inherent danger.
The real-world human cost of this injustice was catastrophic. Alberto lost over $500,000 in seized crypto assets because authorities mismanaged his gear, his wallets.
He suffered severe PTSD from the ordeal, the coercion, and he was ultimately forced to pay a hefty $10,000 bail for his release in May 2018 after 8 grueling months unjustly spent in prison. This leads us to the paradoxical value of his non-traditional voice, advocacy and reform. Despite the trauma of being unjustly imprisoned, something highly unusual occurred. ADH's market value jumped to the moon. He received an unbelievable number of job offers.
So, in the highly specialized, high-demand field of cybersecurity, his notoriety, however painful, paradoxically made him a more sought-after expert. His deep operational knowledge was recognized, even if the justice system failed to recognize it. But his greatest fear was realized: the chilling effect. After his case went public, many people in Uruguay stopped reporting security incidents to CERTHI due to fear of similar consequences.
Ethical professionals are now terrified of facing ADH's fate, meaning critical national vulnerabilities are going deliberately unreported, exponentially increasing the nation's cyber debt.
EDH has essentially been forced to become an unofficial national clearinghouse. People contact him directly because they did not trust official channels.
Especially since CERTUI, the agency that betrayed him, offers no legal immunity for vulnerability reporters. His personal trauma is now mitigating national security risks because people trust the persecuted individual more than the institution.
EDH channeled this trauma and newfound credibility into public advocacy, leveraging his past, documented in his book Log into Hell, into a unique form of public influence.
He hosts the Cyber Midnight Club on Twitter Spaces, convened approximately 447 spaces, average 76 participants, operating outside the mainstream media structure.
His style is what he calls transparency radical. He builds deep trust by openly sharing personal stories, admitting his vulnerabilities, using humor.
Which allows him to convene incredibly diverse and high-profile panels, from victim advocates to reformed high-profile cybercriminals like Brett Johnson, black hat activists like Spider.
This blend offers a multidimensional, non-traditional view of online crime that you simply cannot access from official government or corporate sources. And nothing illustrates the systemic incompetence better than the ultimate ironic indication we found. November 2021. The same aggressive Interpol agent who coerced ADH's false confession reached out to him on a public Twitter space to ask him to teach Interpol about cryptocurrencies and fraud.
Yes, the irony is profound, tragic. The system that wrongly jailed him for alleged cybercrime now desperately needed him, the expert they persecuted, to teach them basic literacy in the field.
It demonstrates beyond any doubt the system's profound internal knowledge deficit and its reliance on the very expertise it tried to crush.
Based on this unique, hard-won experience, ADH has specific, actionable recommendations for systemic change. Changes born not from academic theory, but from the trauma of his own injustice.
Like mandatory digital forensics education for police and judiciary, creating technical translators, interlocutors for the legal process.
Exactly. People who can accurately convey technical concepts to judges, and fundamentally updating laws to clearly distinguish between activities, like, say, a website defacement meant to highlight a vulnerability versus actual data theft or extortion.
So as we synthesize this entire ordeal, we see how ADH's personal journey provided critical, potentially life-saving information for Uruguay.
His warnings, delivered on Radio Sarandi in 2021, asserting the country was exposed and being targeted, were validated 3 years later by that catastrophic PKI crisis.
His experience proves that traditional systems that rely on denial, on scapegoating, pursuing noisy activists, operating with outdated pre-digital laws,
inevitably fail to recognize and address silent, dangerous threats until it's far, far too late.
The immense value of ADH's non-traditional perspective lies in his deep first-hand understanding of both the technology that constitutes the threat
and the profound systemic legal flaws that allow that threat to flourish unchecked. ADH realized, as he was forced to step back into the world after his imprisonment,
that justice is a beautiful word, but in practice, maybe it stays there in a beautiful word.
He was punished and betrayed for doing the right thing, demonstrating the profound existential risk ethical professionals take in an unequipped environment.
And this leaves us with a final, provocative thought for you, the learner. We've seen how ADH's unflinching openness about his complex past, his vulnerabilities, paradoxically built deep, enduring trust and influence, even after the traditional system tried to erase his record.
In a world increasingly defined by sophisticated digital deception, where trust is constantly challenged, hidden breaches are the norm. Perhaps the courage to share our own vulnerabilities and acknowledge systemic flaws, as ADH has shown,
is the most potent defense we have against unseen threats.
What does being truly seen with all your technical complexity and personal history cost you? And what does that vulnerability gain for collective defense in a rapidly digitizing world? Something to mull over as you navigate your own digital security landscape.
Until next time.